Welcome to Target Practice. You guys are going to make a Target Practice game that looks like this, and you'll notice a little brown dot moving around. When you click, you will get a certain number of points depending on where that brown dot is. I'm getting 50 points for that blue outer circle. If I can get the inner circle at any point, I'll show no points on the outside, and that inner circle is 200, and you'll see the points values changing. So how does this work? So we made that dartboard with a P5 graphics library that's JavaScript P5. So it's a type of library that's going to allow creative coding using colors. We're going to be able to personalize our game with RGB colors. So RGB is a system called red, green, blue, where a certain amount of red, a certain amount of green, a certain amount of blue will be able to create a particular color. Where depending on what color we want, we can see it has different amounts of red, different amounts of green, and different amounts of blue. So like pure red is all red, no green, no blue. And we're going to use this system to be able to create those colors over here. We're also going to use conditional statements. So like if we have the little brown dot in the red, then we get a certain number of points. Well, what if it's not in red? So else if it is in blue, then we get a certain number of points. And then finally, like else, everywhere else that it's not in the places we said if or else if, then we get no points. So we're going to use these conditional statements to map out how many points we get, and we're going to use this with XY coordinates, where actually the top left over here is going to be 0, 0, unlike a normal coordinate plane. Probably spelling that wrong, but we can see that the normal coordinate system, we usually start in the middle. So we actually start 0, 0 is not in the middle. In this case, 0, 0 is going to be in the top left over here. So let's get started. So create a background. Oldest evidence of archery comes from this cave in South Africa 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, and we're going to do it today. Let's get started. So first up is we got to create a background. Our game needs a colorful background. So open up the Target Practice starter project over here, and we're going to go ahead and have our starter code. Now, for our starter code, that one thing that you may realize is you already have a little bit of a shape already drawn when you run this code over here, and that's intentional. So make sure that if you have a Trinkets account, once you open it up, you click Remix. So this saved code is inside of your My Trinkets, and by clicking on the most recent, you guys are going to open up this code over here. Next up, it's time to split our screen. So we have our instructions on half, and we have the code on one half. So I'm going to split my screen so I have this on one half, and I'm going to drag out my trinket to this side, split my screen, and I'm going to work side by side. This little button takes me back to the code. When I click run, this will show me the output result over here. Okay, so first up is we finish this step, check the checkbox off. We're going to edit the sky. The starter project has some code. Click run to see a blue-filled rectangle drawn from 0, 0. So you'll notice over here that when we look at the code and we run this over here, we have a rectangle, and over at the top left, this coordinate is 0, 0. So if we look at the code, we'll notice that the rectangle is 0, 0. Then we'll also notice that it is a 400 in terms of its length and a 250 in terms of its width rectangle over here. Now I am going to make that happen again. So 250 is what the length is supposed to be. I've already modified that because I was playing around with it. So this is now going back to be exactly what your starter code should look like. Now, if you play around with those values, as I did, you'll notice if that 400, if the width of it becomes half of that, 200, what's going to end up changing is if I run that, you'll see it's exactly half as wide. Instead of being all the way 400 across, it's half as far across. It's only 200 across. Same thing over here. If we go to this length over here, if I made the length 100 over here, we'll notice that, well, the code is going to look a little bit different. It's not going to be quite 250 long. It'll be much shorter. So I'm going to change those values back to 400, and I'm going to change it back to 250. And I'll finally encourage you to also tweak this command over for rectangle, and you'll play with it a little bit too. If I say 100, 0 instead of what it is, you'll notice that my x value is going to start further over here around 100. So my rectangle is going to start being drawn over there. If I run that, you'll see that there's the gap between 0, 0 and 100, 0 over here. You'll also notice finally, and I know I'm going through this step by step, but you'll notice if I do like 100 for my y value over there, then instead of starting at 0 over here, my y value is going to change. You'll notice over here, if you play that it's going to be 100 down over here. So it's going, you normally think of that as the negative direction, but this over here would be 100 and it would be further down. That's the rectangle is drawn down. So play around with the rectangle commands until you kind of get a feel for where it is, because you're going to need to know those for drawing other shapes, especially the grass right below. But next up over here is, okay, so we have x equals 0, y equals 0. That's the top left corner, and it's different than other coordinate systems you may have used. That's just how the P5 is going to work. So the sky has been drawn with a black border. We can see that black border all the way around it. To turn the stroke off for all shapes, we're going to add the no stroke command to the setup function over here. So if we go to line number 11, where it says define setup, the setup of the world, set up your game here, it says size 400 by 400, which is the width and height of the screen. If I were to change this, which I recommend you try doing and seeing what happens, the game is not going to be as wide. Even if the rectangle is more wide, we can't see it. So that's determining the map size. So if I were to increase that to 800 by 800, the map size would also increase, and the rectangle would look smaller compared to it. So our map that we're using for this one over here is 400 by 400. Then below over here, we have frame rate, which is equal to 2, which we'll go over later. And then we're going to add in over here, right below that, the no stroke command. So no stroke, and then make sure you have that indent in that space over there. And now when I run that, we'll notice there isn't that black border around the shape, where previously, if I quickly comment that out, you'll notice that that black border is back. So the no stroke takes away all of the borders from the different shapes over here. So I'm going to keep that so that it truly does look like not a box, but it looks like a sky. Then we run our code and notice that that stroke is gone. Hooray. All right, so check those steps off. Next up is drawing the grass. So we're going to add code to draw a green rectangle at the bottom of the screen over here. So this rectangle, in terms of where it's starting, the starting coordinate is 0 for the x values. It's all the way on the left, and it's 250 down from the top left corner over here. So we're going to have another rectangle being drawn, which is going to be right below over here. Rectangle, which starts at 0, 250. And the same thing, this rectangle, the x value is 400 across, and the y value over here is 150 down. Now, if I run this code just as is, the whole map is going to be blue because I drew in the bottom part, but I don't want the bottom part to be blue. So before I draw that rectangle, as we can see over here, I am going to fill the color to be a different color. The first one, when I say fill sky, that's changing the color to be the color of the sky, which is pre-set up over here, which is 92 red, red, green, blue, 92 red, 204 green, and 206 blue. If I go over to red, green, blue over here, and I type those values in, so 92 for red, then I have 204 for green, and then I have for 206 for blue, we'll see that I'm getting that exact color. So you might already kind of figure this out, but we have preset a color for the grass, so that would be 149 for red. We have 212 for green, and then the blue color is 122. That's that shade of green, and we are going to use that by just calling over here fill, and then we're going to type in grass because we set grass to those RGB values already. So if I go ahead and then have fill grass before that rectangle and I run it, I now have my grass built over here. And that's what this is telling you to add those commands over here. So we've set the fill color to grass to tell it what it does, and we don't need to add the comments over here to the code. They're just there to help you out. And I'm also here to help you out, which is why I'm explaining it. So we run the project, and we see that we've successfully drawn the grass, and that is the first part of this project. In the next part of the project, I am going to go over drawing the targets, firing your arrows. Well, I'll see you guys in part 2 of the video. Hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.